Disaster strikes over the weekend in Tampa Bay. The Lightning get blown out of their own building by the Cats. We're breaking that down as well as looking to the standings and polishing things off with our matchup tonight against Ottawa. All that coming up and more on Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Tanker. Thank you for joining us on this President's Day edition of Locked On Lightning. And before we go into some of the storylines surrounding the team, I just want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. On today's episode, we're unfortunately looking back on that disaster of a game on Saturday afternoon that took place in Amalie against the Florida Panthers. We're taking a look at the standings. It's been a little bit of a while. I would say a week or so since we got into standings watch. We'll take a look at what has changed since then. And also we're wrapping things up with the Lightning hopefully being able to put the pieces back together, really, after really playing well over the last couple of weeks against Ottawa tonight. And just a reminder, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. I've also been asking you all over the last probably the last month, let's say, about what is the best way to keep the conversation going, whether you prefer to comment on YouTube below the videos or, tweet to me on X or whatever the case may be. Well, I decided, we were going back and forth. I think it was Discord and Twitter. Well, I decided we're going to do both. We're going to do Discord and we're going to do Reddit. So we set up a page. We're going to drop the links below in the description below this video on YouTube, as well as in the description on whatever audio platform that you listen to. It'll all be there, all the information, whichever you would like to go on is completely your decision. But we can't wait to have the conversation continue on there. And go ahead, subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel there as well. So we're taking a look at the game over the weekend. That was just, everybody was excited about this. Everybody and their mother that was a Lightning fan or even a Panthers fan was excited about this game going into the weekend. And geez, it couldn't have gone any worse for the Tampa Bay Lightning, who coming into that game were 6-3 in their last 9, playing pretty good hockey over the last couple of weeks and really looking like they turned a corner there for a little bit. And that was the thing that really was shocking. And there's been some people online and saying, well, this kind of game happens to the best teams. But here's the thing is that when it happens to other teams, they usually are able to bounce back from that. The Lightning are the kind of team in which it doesn't take them a game to get back. It takes them a couple of games, if not even more, to get back into the swing of things. And this was a huge disappointment for really pretty much everybody that was on the Lightning side, because you go into a game, you're playing phenomenal hockey. Like I said, you're coming off of 2 big wins in a row, one against your Atlantic Division rivals, the Boston Bruins. 3-2 shutout on the road in Boston. 3-2 shootout on the road in Boston. Phenomenal game. And then you win at home 6-3 against the Colorado Avalanche. You get a little bit of payback there from the Stanley Cup final a couple of years ago. And you're going to this game riding high with, you're playing an earlier game. The team potentially could win this one, move up even further in the standings, or even get closer to Boston or Florida in the standings. And what happens is that you go out there in front of your home home fans, which is even worse. I think that's probably the worst part about this, is that you're going out there and in front of your home fans and you completely just everything that could have gone remotely wrong in this game did. And that was the thing that I really took issue with. And it's, I get it. Teams go, they have their bad games. Everybody has a game in any sport in which we could confidently say afterwards, yeah, you know what? Listen, this wasn't a good one. They simply just didn't have it. But you could file this away late for, maybe as kind of a look back kind of game. Like, man, imagine if we were playing this way then, what if we came out? But obviously that didn't happen. And the Lightning got off to a rough start, gave up 4 goals in the first period, and then they could just completely fell asleep in the second period. And then the third period happens, and Vasilevsky's out of the game, and just, at that point, the game's pretty much over. I mean, the game was pretty much over midway through the second period, if not into the second period. But I've spoken about it multiple times on this podcast. I've spoken about it multiple times elsewhere, whether it be on Twitter or whatever the case may be, is that, yeah, your team is going to not play well consistently here and there. I mean, that's just the nature of what the weirdness that is hockey. You have a team that at one point looks like they could win the President's Trophy and then on another night come out and play as if they're a lottery team. And that happens. And that's when you got to rely on your $9 million goaltender or whatever, how much money Vasilevsky makes. Really what it comes down to is that that's the kind of game that, and I've really said it, numerous times in many different ways, that really, I get it. Like Vasilevsky, this is what he is now, especially with how good the league has gotten over the last couple of years in scoring. And I get it. We're not going to see, the days of there just being games in which he just completely takes over. I think for now, unless, he shows otherwise, that's gone. But in this game, and there was a save here or there, but this was a game that really called for when your team's not playing well in front of you, and it wasn't. And I get it's a difficult environment to play in, especially when your team's not playing well. You have the Panthers, who are just a phenomenal hockey team, who are just very fine-tuned, very polished. Once again, a front runner. Well, not once again, but once again poised to get back to the Stanley Cup final. This is a game where you look at your goaltender and say, like, you need to win. You need to at least keep us in this. And we didn't see that from Vasilevsky. More times than not. I mean, there was a good number of goals in this game in which, the Montour goal really summed it up. The Montour goal, that's a save that you need to make. That's a save that you should make. And he didn't. It was right through the 5-hole. And there was other instances. It was on the challenge where the Lightning said he was interfered with. I didn't see that. I think that was just hoping maybe that there was something there, which obviously wasn't. I thought it was a good goal from the minute it went in. Just Vasilevsky needs to be more. He needs to be more aware. He needs to have better positioning, and we just haven't seen that consistently this year. And then, like I said, this was a game in which, obviously, from the puck drop, really, after the Hagel goal, that's where it really went sideways. Which very good start to the game. Brendan Hagel, phenomenal. Hope he continues to play well. Really the only positive that really came out of this game from the Lightning. And then, we could say that late goal in the third period. If you really want to go there. But this is a game in which, like I said, and I'm not trying to be over harsh, but that's just the reality of the situation, is that in a game like this, when your team is clearly not feeling it, especially when the Panthers kind of like, oh crap, let's go, and they start firing off goals left and right, that's when, like, Vasilevsky needs to mentally say to himself, all right, I got to be better. I got to figure this out and keep my guys in it because clearly they're just completely discombobulated right now. And it showed. I mean, there was no rotation on defensive coverage down low. I mean, oftentimes Vasilevsky was just left out there to hang. In that same breath, he should be making those saves. I mean, he makes enough money. He has proven in the past as well that he can make those saves. So plenty of blame to go around for this team, 100%. It's a game, like I said, that you file away, you forget about it, and then maybe later on in the year, if not over the summer, you kind of look back on it and laugh a little bit if you want to. But just a very disappointing game. The Lightning, like I said, lose this one 9-2 to the Florida Panthers over the weekend. And let's forget about it and move on. So coming up in just a little bit, we're going to look at the standings watch. Obviously, things have changed over the last couple of weeks or so. The Lightning getting back into the top three and quickly getting out of the top three in the division. We talk about that. We talk about what everybody else is doing in the division as well. But first, let's talk about one of our first sponsors of the day, and that is our friends over at Camino Consulting. Now, how would you like to get to know someone better in an hour than you would in a year? Understanding one another better prevents small misunderstandings from becoming big ongoing fights. After providing more than 20 years of service to small and mid-sized businesses, help management groups navigate conflict and onboarding new employees, Camino is offering a digital seminar for families and couples. Did your Valentine's Day gift of tickets to the game not go over as well as you'd hoped? Well, get the free couples and family online seminar for 25% off for the first month of February using the discount code Locked On. Again, that is discount code Locked On for 25% off for the rest of the month at www.caminoconsulting.ca, or mention Locked On when reaching out for a business seminar and receive the first 5 profiles free. So we just got done talking about that just nightmare fuel of a game that was the 9-2 loss against the Florida Panthers. A game in which just really nothing went right and everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. And the Panthers thoroughly outplayed the Lightning. The Lightning were not ready for what the Panthers were throwing their way. But you know what? You move. That's the good thing about the NHL schedule is that you're able, it's not like football where you got to sit there for a week. You got to marinate in it. And, you got to listen to your coaches really get on certain things here and there about it. You could just move on from it. And the Lightning are going to tonight against Ottawa. But before we get into that later on, we're talking about the standings in the Atlantic Division, because as we all know, things change rapidly in the NHL with the standings. And before we get into that, I just want to remind you, like I said, get in on the conversation. You could drop a comment below this video on YouTube, or if you're listening on an audio platform and you don't listen or you don't follow us on YouTube, that's fine, but you still want to get on the conversation, you can either tweet to me on Twitter at DenkyDank, DENKYDENK, or like I said, down below in the description of this video and this podcast, or this episode, we will have the links to the Reddit page that we launched, the Locked On Lightning Reddit page, as well as the Locked On Lightning Discord. So go ahead, check that out. Let us know how you felt about that game, how you feeling about where the Lightning are in the standings, and we're going to talk about that right now. So Lightning currently are, at this moment, obviously it could change because we had some hockey games here and there that are ongoing throughout the course of the day. Lightning currently rank 4th in the division at 65 points, 3 behind Toronto, something that could obviously change within the next 24 hours. And as for the wild card conversation in the Eastern Conference, they are 3 points ahead of Detroit and 5 ahead of New Jersey. And then it kind of falls off from there. The Islanders blowing a big game over the weekend against the New York Rangers. Washington's very far back with 56 points. So really the only team the Lightning for now have to keep their eye on as they're trying to climb back up into the thick of things is the Detroit Red Wings, a team that, like I said on paper, one of the teams that really scares me. A team that plays the Lightning very well. A team whose plus minus different, whose goal differential is so much better than the Lightning. A team that will continue to get better. This isn't kind of like a a thing kind of like what we saw from Buffalo last year, where they were kind of threatening in the divisional play. But the thing is, when we look at the schedule and we look at the standings, it's one of those things where at this point in time, the only team ahead of the Lightning that really could really put them out is Toronto. And that's the frustrating thing for me about this, is because Toronto is a team, regardless of their record, regardless of their goal differential. I mean, we could go up and down the standings if you'd like. Toronto's playing very good hockey, 8-2 in their last 10, winners of 4 in their last 4 games. Very good team, has tons of talent, but obviously their Achilles heel has always been goaltending. And that's the thing that's frustrating, because the Lightning should have that down pat by now. Vasilevsky, I thought, has played very well up until that game over the weekend. Like, if you want to tune into the previous episode, I did talk about Vasilevsky. Is he back to Vezina Trophy form? I went in depth about how really, those numbers are kind of something that really you're not going to see that often, I think, from him, especially until the defense gets better on this team. But like I said, he has a ton of talent in the world, and he does have potential at times to be that guy that could really carry this team. But at the same time, that's something that we have seen in years past that does eventually lead to him burning out far faster than we would have liked him to be. And really what it comes down to is that this team really needs more help all around. And that's why the upcoming trade deadline is so important. If you're not aware, if you didn't see me on Twitter, I mean, I believe I did talk about it on the last episode, if not the previous one. I did discuss how there is potential for the Lightning to pick up some pieces at the deadline, offensively and defensively. Long story short, it's a trade that involves Calgary, in which they get Noah Hannafin and Blake Coleman. I did all the numbers. It would, if they were to retain 15% of Coleman's contract, that leads to them having at least $73,000 left in the cap space, which I know is not a lot, but at the same time, it's better than not having any. It's also a trade that, as much as I would love for it to happen, I don't know how realistic it can be. I mean, I would imagine Calgary would try to get as much back in that trade. I do give up a lot as the imaginary GM of the Tampa Bay Lightning. But what I'm trying to say, and how that reflects to the standings, is that really at the end of the day, the Lightning really need to play at a consistent level that reflects in the standings. As much as we love to come on here every episode and talk about how the Tampa Bay Lightning playing sustainable hockey, and yes, that is something that I strive for this team to do on a nightly basis. At the end of the day, they can't have nights like that, what we saw on Saturday. And because at the end of the day, I think that it is more beneficial for this team to finish in a top 3 position than to really gamble with the wild card position, just because, like I said, you have a team like Detroit, who is very good, who they're still relatively young, they're still figuring it out, but I still think they're a team that could go on a run at any point. That's just the way hockey works. And the same thing goes for the Devils. They're a team, yes, they're still far back. They're a handful of points back in the standings, but at the same time, that is a team that I don't know what their cap situation is. I don't really know what they have in terms of trade chips, but the whole wild card conversation can flip on its head if a team like the Devils picks up a goaltender at the trade deadline, because then I firmly believe a team like that, like I said, who has Jack Hughes, one of the better young players in the league, and is so multi-dimensional in his play, as well as, he has a bunch of pieces around him. That is something that could definitely propel this team into the mix, into the conversation with the Tampa Bay, with a Detroit. And that's not something that I think is going to be mentally healthy for this team, emotionally healthy for the fan base as well. I think that really, if the Lightning want to help themselves, they really want to shoot for that third spot. They really want to also not settle there, but also propel themselves into the conversation like they did only about 72 hours ago, in which we were having kind of, I would say at the time, they were realistic conversations as well as the way Tampa was trending. This could have been a team that, if they continued that trend of play, could have propelled themselves into the top two against the Panthers, possibly taken over the top spot from the Boston Bruins, but that is not the case right now. But like I've said numerous times on this podcast, the standings could drastically change in a matter of 24 hours. And that is something that I love about this conversation. And that's something that a conversation that we're going to continue to have, because the Lightning win tonight against Ottawa, and we'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. And I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head where the Panthers are tonight, as well as Toronto. If both of those teams lose, Tampa Bay picks up a win tonight, especially in regulation. I mean, that really is something that, like I said, could change the conversation very drastically, very quickly. So let me know. Like I said, we are on Reddit now. We're on Discord. Look in the description of this episode below. We'll have the links to that. Go ahead and join the conversation there. Let us know how you're feeling about all that. So coming up in just a little bit, we're going to be talking about tonight's game against the Ottawa Senators. But first, let's talk about our last sponsor of the day, and that is our friends over at the Sleeper app. Now, it's the halfway point of the NHL season, Lightning fans. And regardless of where the Lightning are in the standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you could win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. I would, in this contest, I tried it, won some money. I had Nikita Kucherov. I had Brandon Hagel. I did it last week, and I won some money. Those guys picked up points, and you can too, because all you have to do is pick guys like that, Kuch and Hagel, to record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game, and you could be a winner yourself as well. So go ahead, use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. So, as always, one last thing, I just want to humbly remind you all, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever we are. We're on, like I said, we're on YouTube. We're on wherever they stream audio for podcasts. We are there. That's Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, wherever it is, we are there. Also, you could join the conversation, whether dropping a comment below this video on our YouTube channel, or in our Reddit, or in our Discord, or on Twitter. We have so many opportunities for you to get your voice heard on the conversations that we are currently having on this show. We just got done talking about the Cats game over the weekend. That was just that was just the dumpster fire. Like I said, we're filing that away. We're leaving it as be, and we're moving on. We just got done about the standings watch. I would love to see this team in the top three, preferably maybe even make a play for the second spot in the division. And, tonight's game against the Ottawa Senators, very important, as is every game for this Tampa Bay Lightning team heading into the latter stages of the NHL season. So far in this season series, they've played 2 games. The series is tied at 1 apiece. The first game was 5-2 win for Ottawa, and then the Lightning came back in November, about a month later, winning that game 6-4. And I always talk about it with these two teams whenever they face, because it is just another team that just really, it's not a team that I look forward to playing against. And I think a lot of Lightning fans could agree with me with this, is that, say what you want about the way where Ottawa is in the standings. Say what you want about their team rankings and all of that. They are a team that just, when it comes to playing against Tampa, you see that they just are able to rise to the occasion. They just know how to make things super tough for Tampa Bay. They take Tampa Bay a little bit of a down on a peg, and that's really what it comes down to. And it really comes down to a game. Can the Tampa Bay Lightning manage their emotions, manage the flow of the game, and be able to take control early on and do what they want to do to win this game, and also allow guys like Nikita Kucherov, Brandon Hagel, Nick Paul, Anthony Cirelli, as well as Andrei Vasilevsky to get going early on, get into the flow of the game, because really that's what it is. The Achilles heel for the Lightning is that, they allow the game, if they're not playing well, like we saw against Florida early on, they allow the flow of the game and the emotions and all of that entails early on to get the best of them. You're not going to be in for a good night. If they are able to get things going and dictate the narrative of the game early on in the opening, I would say 10 minutes. I think those first 10 minutes are very crucial for this Tampa Bay Lightning team, and a team like Ottawa, who is going to go out there and really try to take that away from Tampa Bay. That's going to be a very important tug of war early on for these two teams. Now, as it stands in the rankings, Tampa Bay's, obviously, as we all know by now, has the best power play in the league, and that's really going to be the bread and butter for tonight. Really, that's going to be really the recipe to winning for this Tampa Bay Lightning team, because if you go out there, you're going to get your power play opportunities, but at the end of the day, if you're not capitalizing, if you're not going at least 1 for 3, you're not going to be in for a good night. As well as, if you look on the other side of that, Ottawa's power play is down at the bottom, 30th in the league's their penalty kill, 74.2% at the bottom of the barrel of the league. Really, the Lightning are going to have to go out there and take advantage of that, knowing that Ottawa is not as good as other teams, especially when you are going out there as the number one power play team. Really is going to be an interesting battle for me out there tonight. It's going to be the face-off battle, because really, like I've said numerous times, almost to exhaustion on this show, is that Tampa Bay, if they are able to manage the face-off circle and dominate puck possession, take control of that, everything will fall into place. And they're 9th in the league, ranked in the top 10, so that's always a good thing for this Tampa Bay Lightning team. As well as on the other side of that, Ottawa's not too far off. They're 14th in the league. Really only less than a percentage really separates these two teams. That shows how tight it is. But I'm very curious to see how Ottawa is going to manage early on. I'm sure they're going to go out there, going to play very aggressive. We all know what to expect out of Brady Tkachuk at this point in time. I'm sure he's going to take his shots at Kucherov. We saw Kucherov playing physical the other night, really physical. He laid a big hit. I think it was on Brady's brother, Matthew Tkachuk. I think he hit him. There was a play along the boards that I thought was very impressive. I was surprised that Kucherov, a lot of people don't realize that. Yeah, he scores points, he scores goals, but he's not afraid to go out there and play physical. But at the same time, a guy like Brady Tkachuk, who we all know, he loves to go out there and ruffle some feathers. That's the thing that's going to be kind of, I think for a lot of people, it's going to be a point of nervousness in terms of, because as much as you would love to see your top scorer go out there and do pretty much everything as he really much has all season long, you don't want him to get into an altercation. And I think that Brady Tkachuk, a guy who just doesn't stray from that, who almost pretty much welcomes it at this point in his career, you don't want to see that. You don't want to see Kucherov get hurt or jumped by a couple of Ottawa Senators players. And that's why your big guns out there, your Chernaks, your Hedmans, your Nick Pauls, the guys that are out there to fight your battles, who are willing to, throw some hands. Even Brandon Hagel, who has really impressed me over this past year, and even last year, about how physical he's willing to be. That's really something that I'm looking forward to as well. But really, I think as much as we love to talk about Cooch, as much as we love to talk about Steven Stamkos, I think at the end of the night, other than the obvious point that is Andre Vasilevsky really playing well in this one, is Braden Point. I would love to see him get going, score a couple of goals in this one, really put his stamp on the game, because, you know, you get a guy like that going, especially this late in the season. This is really a statement game for the Tampa Bay Lightning. You know, nobody likes to lose the way they did at home, especially against your division, not only your division rivals, but your in-state rivals. So you definitely want to go out there tonight, kind of open up a can of whoop ass on Ottawa. And really, that's what it comes down to. So let me know in the comments below what y'all thinking about that. And, you know, we'll be back tomorrow to recap, hopefully a Lightning win, hopefully a good Lightning win. And like I said, as always, you know, we have the Reddit page open. We have the Discord chat open. So go ahead. It's all free, people. And, you know, I would love to hear from all of you. So go ahead, jump in on those communities as well. So in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.